The pipe under the sink has been dry for 3 days. No plumber scheduled, no parts on order, no hardware store run. And yet, watch the drain. Water moves through it clean, quiet, with no resistance, the way it always should have, because the fix was already in the wall. It had been in the wall the entire time. Total cost of what changed it, $2. Most homes in the developed world are plumbed on a system designed in the 1800s and sold to you as if it were inevitable. Cast iron became PVC, lead became copper, and the markup stayed exactly where it always was. When a joint fails, the assumption is that a professional must come, parts must be purchased, a truck must arrive, and a bill between $200 and $400 must be signed. That assumption is the product. The failure is not the problem. The assumption is. The Romans moved water across mountains and under cities for 600 years using nothing but gravity, tar, and fitted stone. No wrenches, no silicone cartridges, no quarterly maintenance contracts. The Nabateans carved cistern and pipe systems into desert rock so precisely that their joints held for 2 millennia without a single replacement fitting. The Japanese, during the Edo period, built bamboo water conveyance systems through entire city districts with joinery techniques that expanded under pressure rather than failing from it. The pipe got tighter the more water it carried. Victor Schauberger, working in Austria in the 1930s, documented in precise technical terms what every ancient plumber understood intuitively. Water wants to move in a spiral, and when you force it to move in a straight line through rigid right-angle geometry, you create the exact stress points where failure will eventually occur. Every fitting you have ever had replaced was probably at a right angle. The joint compound manufacturers understood this decades ago. The reason your plumber charges you to replace a fitting rather than teaching you to prevent the failure is the same reason a razor company never teaches you to strop a blade. Solving it permanently is not a business model. Servicing it indefinitely is. You have seen this your whole life and just never connected the dots. A wine bottle cork swells when wet and seals tighter than any synthetic cap. A wooden boat hull, soaked for a season, closes its own gaps. Your own skin, cut shallow, knits back together without instruction. Every natural material that touches water was designed by time to respond to water. The materials in your walls were designed by a procurement committee to respond to a service contract. That one shift in design intention is the reason your pipes cost money to fail and nature's cost nothing. Here's what you need. I want to be honest with you about every number. You need plumber's tape, also called PTFE tape or thread seal tape. A roll costs between 50 cents and $1.50 at any hardware store, and half the people watching this already have a roll in a drawer somewhere and don't know it. You need a pipe wrench or an adjustable crescent wrench, which you already own. You need a small wire brush, the kind that costs $1.20 and comes 3 to a pack. You need white vinegar, which is in your kitchen. You may need a replacement rubber washer. These are sold in assortment packs for $2, and one pack has enough washers to fix every leaky joint in a standard home twice over. In some cases, you will not need the washer at all. That is genuinely it. $2 all in against a $300 service call. The materials are the same category. The markup is the difference. Here's the one thing most people get wrong. They tighten the joint, the leak appears, they reach for the wrench, they crank it another quarter turn, and for 3 days, it seems like the problem is solved. Then the drip returns, slightly worse, and now the fitting has a hairline stress fracture running from the thread edge that you cannot see without a magnifying glass, but that the water finds immediately. You have not fixed the leak, you have scheduled it to become a pipe replacement. That is what failure looks like. A dry joint for 3 days, then a drip that is slightly worse than the original with a sound that is now coming from a different part of the same fitting. Success looks like a joint that you finish wrapping, hand-tightened to 2/3 of what feels right, and that produces no drip at all, not even a slow one, within 20 minutes of water pressure being restored. The tape is doing the work. The wrench is just setting the position. Here's the full process, start to finish. Shut the water off at the nearest valve below the problem joint. Not at the main, at the local shutoff, the small oval handle usually under the sink or behind the toilet. Turn it clockwise until it stops. Open the faucet above it to release the remaining pressure in the line and let that water drain out completely. Now look at the joint. If it is a threaded connection, which is the most common residential failure point, you're going to disassemble it. Grip the fitting on the stationary side with your crescent wrench and turn the connecting nut counterclockwise with your hand first. If it does not move by hand, apply the wrench to the connecting piece only, not the pipe, and break it loose with one controlled motion. Pull the pieces apart. Take your wire brush and scrub the male threads, the ones that screw into the fitting, for about 20 seconds. You are not sanding them. You are removing the mineral buildup and old tape residue that sits in the thread valleys and prevents a clean new seal. Run your finger across the threads when you're done. They should feel sharp-edged and clean, not gritty or coated. If there is old tape still wound in there, pull it off entirely, every layer. Start fresh. Now take your PTFE roll. Hold the male threaded end of the pipe in your non-dominant hand, threads pointing away from you. Tear a starting edge on the tape and press it against the second thread from the end, not the very first thread at the tip, the second one. This is where most people begin wrong, starting at the very tip, and then the first wrap bunches and tears when you thread the fitting on, and the seal is broken before it is even made. Hold the starting edge with your thumb and begin wrapping clockwise when viewed from the threaded end. The same direction is tightening. The tape needs to go on in this direction, or it will unwind as the fitting tightens instead of compressing. Stretch it slightly as you wrap. Not aggressively, just enough to feel it thinning a little between your fingers. You want it snug against the threads, following their path, filling the valleys. Go around 3 times minimum. 4 times is better on older threads. 5 is too many. You will not be able to thread the fitting on without cross-threading. 3 to 4, consistent tension, clockwise, starting at the second thread. When you reach the end of your wraps, press the tape firmly into the last thread with your thumbnail and tear it. Run your thumb down the length of the wrapped section once more, pressing the tape into every thread valley. It should look almost painted on, smooth, white, with the thread ridges showing faintly through it. That is correct. If it looks lumpy or has a lifted edge, unwrap it and go again. The tape is 50 cents. The time to redo it is 30 seconds. Do it right. Now thread the fitting back on by hand. This is important. Hand tight first, always. You are feeling for the threads to catch and engage cleanly without resistance for the first 2 or 3 turns. If you feel resistance immediately, you are cross-threading. Stop, back it off, reline, and start again. Cross-threading on a wrapped joint tears the tape unevenly and you will get a partial seal that holds for a week and then fails at 2 in the morning. Hand thread it until it stops moving easily, then apply the wrench for 1 full turn, maximum 1.5. You are looking for snug, not locked. Snug means the fitting does not move if you try to turn it by hand. Locked means you have compressed the tape past its working range and it will crack under thermal expansion. Before you turn the water back on, check the rubber washer situation. Most compression fittings and faucet connections have a rubber washer sitting at the contact face. Not in the threads, but at the flat seal point where the 2 pieces press together. Pick up the disassembled end and look inside the nut for a small rubber ring. If it is there, press your thumbnail into it. A healthy washer has some give, some memory, it springs back when you release it. A failed washer feels hard. Compressed flat does not spring back, or has a visible crack or flat spot on its face. If it has failed, pull it out, find its matching diameter in your $2 assortment pack, and press the new one into the seat. This takes 4 seconds, and it is the difference between a joint that holds for 20 years and one that comes back in 6 months. Turn the local shutoff valve back on, slowly. Not all the way immediately. Half a turn, then pause and watch the joint for 30 seconds. You are looking at the tape-wrapped section specifically, not the body of the pipe. If you see a bead of moisture forming on the threads, turn the shutoff off, apply a second layer of tape and go again. If the joint stays dry at half pressure, open the valve fully. Watch for another full minute. Run the faucet above to put the system under actual use pressure. This is higher than static pressure, and this is where marginal seals reveal themselves. The smart test requires no tools at all. Dry your hands completely. Run your index finger slowly around the circumference of the joint at the thread line. You're not pressing in, just dragging the pad of your finger across the surface. A working seal feels room temperature and completely dry. A failing seal feels slightly cool against your dry fingertip, even when no visible drip is present, because water vapor is moving through a microgap and evaporating on contact with air. Cool and dry means sealed. Cool and slightly damp, or just mysteriously cooler than the pipe body, means you have a micro leak that will become a visible drip within a week. Trust your finger over your eyes on this test. Your skin detects moisture before your eye does. One successful repair in a home saves between $250 and $350 on average for what a licensed plumber would charge for the same result. That is the one-time math. But a home has between 12 and 30 threaded connections in its plumbing depending on age and layout. If 3 of those connections fail over the next decade, which is a conservative estimate for any home built before 1995, you have just protected yourself from between $750 and over $1,000 in service calls with a $2 roll of tape you bought once and a skill you now carry in your hands permanently. 4 people in a household means every one of them can be taught this in under 10 minutes. A family that understands this repair is not a plumbing customer in any meaningful sense again. At scale, a small rental property, a community building, a farm with multiple structures, you are looking at eliminating thousands of dollars in annual maintenance costs with materials that cost less than a cup of coffee. No bills, no infrastructure, no asking anyone's permission. This method does have one honest limitation. It addresses threaded joint failure and compression seal failure, which are the dominant causes of household leaks. It does not address a cracked pipe body, a failed solder joint on copper, or a collapsed fitting where the physical structure of the plastic or metal has given way. If you turn the water on after completing this repair and the leak is coming from the middle of the pipe length and not from any joint or connection point, that is a different problem, and you should not try to tape seal a pipe body. That is the one scenario where the plumber's visit is legitimately necessary. Know the difference before you start. A joint leak and a pipe body crack look similar from a wet floor. But on inspection, a joint leak traces exactly to a connection point, and a crack presents as a line or spot on a smooth section of pipe with no fitting nearby. If it is on the smooth section, stop and call the professional. If it is at a fitting, you already know what to do. Somewhere in the Negev desert, the stone-cut channels of the Nabatean water system are still intact. 2,000 years of sun and sand have not moved them. The joints at the collection points are still fitted the way they were when the city of Petra was drawing water from the hills. They did not use a service contract. They used geometry, material knowledge, and the understanding that a seal built correctly does not need to be revisited. What you just learned is the same understanding, applied to different materials in a different century, but drawn from the same root principle. The water follows the path you give it, and if you give it a path worth following, it stops looking for a way out. I don't know what brought you here. It doesn't matter. It works either way.